So guys, we made it to another international break, but before we get into any of that, let's talk about all the weekend's action. Guys, welcome back to another video on the channel and to another episode of the Championship Roundup. Plenty of drama happening in the Championship over the course of this weekend. As always, want to get your guys' thoughts on everything in the comments down below. Before we jump into anything though, let's take a look at the prediction leagues. And finally, after all this time that the prediction league has been going, for the first time in either season, I've managed to go to the top of the prediction league. And I'm going to enjoy the moment while it does last. I had a pretty good game, to be honest with you. I picked up 11 points in the end and have gone top on 112 points. Secretly, I'm quite glad there's a bit of an international break in here, just so I can enjoy being top for the moment. But yeah, as ever, really close in and around the top of the moment, and fair play to everyone who did get into double figures this week. Top of League 1 at the moment, it is Jaden FC, joint with the bottom of the main prediction league at the moment with 87 points, so really not a lot separating the bottom of the main prediction league and the top of League 1. And it's Miles Parrish who drops down to the top of League 2 with 81 points. Once again, fair play to everyone in there who gets around the sort of 9 to the 8 score lines for this week, because there were quite a few unpredictable ones in there. But without any further ado guys, let's jump into this one. And so we'll start out with Friday night's game, and quite an entertaining one actually for a 1-0er. It was Stoke 1, West Brom 0. It did have the feeling for the first sort of like 70 or so minutes of this one that it just wasn't going to be Stoke's day, because they were by far and away the better team in this one and could have had 2 or 3 goals, to be honest with you. Quite similar to how they played against Preston when they were getting into some really threatening areas. It was just that final touch over the line and they couldn't quite get in. Obviously they hit the post, they hit the crossbar. Sam Johnston made a string of terrific saves. They had that own goal which was ruled out, Furlong heading into the back of his own net. Originally sort of watching it in live time, I was quite confused, but obviously it's that one angle that you see from sort of behind the goal when the foul's a little bit more obvious to see why the referee ruled that one out in the end. Second half they had the penalty as well, which was saved by Johnston, but eventually the breakthrough comes. It's a lovely ball through and a lovely chip over the keeper from Nick Powell, and deservedly so for Stoke in the end. You know, they were brilliant against Preston and they didn't get over the line in that one, and it looked to be heading in a similar direction for this one. West Brom not really at the races for this one. I think that despite their 2 previous wins before this one, this first loss of the season has been on the cards for some time, I think, particularly in those string of draws that they had not too long ago. So yeah, they'll look to dust themselves down after this international break. Great result from Stoke there though, and thoroughly deserved. Next up then, and this game here right here is just an example of how bonkers the Championship really is. Coventry were coming off the back of that 5-0 loss to Luton. Fulham looked really sharp going forward last time out against Swansea, and in the end it's full time. Coventry 4, Fulham 1. Now first off, everything seemed to be going to plan for Fulham really. By no means were they sort of like at their sparkling best, but they've got themselves into that leading position with the Mccarthy own goal. But the second half was an absolute capitulation. The first goal was a real miscommunication. Obviously Gyökeres sticks that one away. The second one is pretty contentious because obviously this one comes from the penalty spot. I think it's fair to say it was a dive. Looking back on all the replays, you know, Robinson does dangle a little bit of a leg out there, but there was no contact in that one whatsoever, so definitely been bought there. But then after that there was still no reaction from Fulham, and Fulham just seemed to be sort of like gobsmacked that Coventry had come onto them that much in the second half. The third goal from Matt Stone was a thumping finish, and then the fourth one from Gyökeres was actually some really good movement actually, and a really good finish to make it 4. But in that second half Fulham failed to register a shot on target despite all the possession that they had and things like that, and Coventry just have the formula at home, don't they? And what a way to go into the international break this was. Next up then we head to Barnsley up against Millwall, and just what Barnsley didn't need for this game was a late winner for Millwall and another loss heading into this next international break. Now when we're speaking about Millwall, obviously back-to-back wins for them now in the Championship. It was always going to be dependent on what happened after those sort of string of draws that Millwall were getting to sort of gauge where they're at this point in the season, because it's very hard to tell when you're like constantly drawing matches. But the fact they come out of that drawing streak, winning their last couple of matches, does put a more positive slant on their start to the season. It was Jed Wallace linking up with Murray Wallace for the winner in the 89th minute in the end, but it really leaves a sour taste for Barnsley heading into this international break now. With Hull winning this weekend, it now means that Barnsley are the only side in the Championship to have only won 1 match so far this season. I'll do a bit of a more in-depth video over this international break about some of the managers that I think could be in trouble over the next few weeks, and Marcus Schopp certainly falls into that category at the moment. But good win there from Millwall. It did feel like the first goal in this one was always going to be decisive, with not all too much in the final third. Next up then though, to Birmingham up against Nottingham Forest, and the revival of Nottingham Forest season is continuing under Steve Cooper with a terrific 3-0 away win in this one. I mean, the new manager bounce is clearly in full swing at Forest at the moment, and we'll talk about the away side first of all, because they were fully worth their 3 points in this one. Clinical going forward. Lewis Grabban with the opener. We usually associate Grabban with being that sort of like 6-yard box poacher who doesn't do all too much moving sort of in and off the ball and things like that, but this first goal and sort of rubbished all that. He takes the ball from the halfway line, brings it up towards the box, and then absolutely rifles it in to the roof of the net. Great finish for that one. Yates with the second from a set piece, and then Spence with the third in the second half. 2 assists for Philip Zinkernagel as well, which I also thought was worth mentioning. But from Birmingham's perspective, really shoddy here, and this has been telling for a little bit now. You know, the fall off from their earlier form in the start of the season has been quite obvious to see recently. Obviously, they're shipping a hell of a lot more goals, but at the other end of the pitch as well, chance creation hasn't been necessarily awful for Birmingham, but their finishing in and around the box has been really poor. I think in this one they hit the post twice. Hogan obviously had that goal ruled out for offside as well, but they've only scored 1 goal now in their last 5 matches, and even that goal was a penalty. So a little bit of tinkering is needed in that Birmingham squad over this international break, because something just isn't quite right there at the moment. For Forest though, more of the same after the international break, and they'll be flying up the league. Next we're then to Bloomfield Road, where we have Blackpool continuing on their impressive run as they saw off Blackburn by 2-1. Now, we mentioned in the preview coming into this game about some of the defensive injuries that Blackburn had. I thought they were quite telling in this one actually, and Blackpool certainly took advantage of that. Keshi Anderson was absolutely running the show in the first half, wasn't he? And he had a part to play in both the goals that were scored. Blackpool took the lead after just 4 minutes in this one. Shane Lavery with another goal for his tally this season. Took a bit of a deflection this one, but assisted by Anderson, a nice finish in the end. He then has to go off. He's replaced by Jerry Yates, and it doesn't take him all too long before he's getting on the score sheet once again. Anderson also involved in this one with some nice dribbling. Gets that ball in, I think to Medina originally, and then Yates is there to head in to make it 2. First off, Blackburn were just not at the races whatsoever. Second half, they had a little bit more of a go about them. Obviously, Brereton gets them back into it. Blackpool then have another injury with Chris Maxwell having to go off injured, as well as Shane Lavery, who obviously went off in that first half. But Stuart Moore, to be fair to him, does make a terrific save, and it does finish 2-1 Blackpool, which I think was a deserved 3 points in the end, given the whole 90 minutes. Blackburn will be keen to get some of those players back after this international break, but their away record on the whole so far this season has just left a little bit to be desired, to be honest. I think they've got away with a couple of results on the road so far. Next up then, we head to Bournemouth up against Sheffield United, and a big result for Bournemouth in this one, and a frustrating time for Sheffield United to be going into the international break off the back of 2 consecutive defeats. Now, for quite a few spells in this game, Sheffield United were playing some decent football actually, and they did go on to take the lead in the second half. Billy Sharp once again turning provider for this one, and a terrific finish from Morgan Gibbs-White, who just sort of runs onto the ball and then smashes it in past the goalkeeper to make it 1. Now, the Bournemouth equaliser obviously changes the whole reflection of the game, and there was a fair bit of controversy about this one. Now, first thing to say is, I mean, Enda Stevens is a little bit reckless in the way he comes in for this challenge. You know, he absolutely hurtles himself into Dom Solanke in the end, takes him down originally outside the box, and then does the foul continue on inside the box. A lot of people have been talking about this one, and I'd quite like to hear your guys' thoughts on it in the comments down below. My original thought was it should have been a free kick. Obviously, in the end, it's given as a penalty, and Bournemouth then make it 1, and then a couple minutes later, they go and make it 2 with Billing, who's probably one of the most informed players in the Championship at the moment. Sheffield United do have a chance to level it later on, but that comes off the crossbar, and Bournemouth do hold out for all 3 points. Massive result there for Bournemouth, considering everything that went on in this game. But yeah, real sucker punch there for Sheffield United. Next up then, we had Cardiff losing once again. Reading walking away with all 3 points from this one. Junior Hoylett, the former Cardiff player, scoring the only goal of the game. It was a brilliant ball forward by John Swift, and then of course, to sum up Cardiff's look at the moment, it would be Hoylett who went ahead and stuck it away. But in comparison to some of the other performances that we've seen Cardiff put in recently, you know, with the amount of goals they've been shipping, with their lack of any sort of threat going forward, I did think that in terms of a performance, it was significantly better in this one. They were getting in some decent areas. Ryan Giles, I thought, was looking quite threatening for this one and linking up the play with some of the chances going into the box and things like that. But that goal just wouldn't come for Cardiff in this one. I would like to give a big shout out to Luke Southwood in net for Reading, and since he's come in for Raphael, I think he's been absolutely brilliant, to be honest with you. No Championship goalkeeper has had a better save percentage than him in the league so far this season. 85% of the shots on target against him he's managed to save this season, and another clean sheet for him in this game. And yeah, he was really put under pressure for significant time by Cardiff in this one, who it's just not happening for at the moment. Next then we had a goalless draw being played out between Derby and Swansea. Swansea, as we'd expect in this one, had a lot of the ball, a lot of possession and a lot of control, and they had their fair share of chances, especially in the first half, to be fair to them. Matt Grimes had a chance which just flashed wide of the post. Their best chance probably came from a quick throw-in, which in the end fell for Bidwell in the box, but he couldn't do anything but hit it straight at Allsop. Derby's best chances coming on the break in this one, couple falling to Tom Lawrence and things like that, and it does feel like Derby are just a couple of attacking players away from like being a really great side. And given the circumstances of their situation at the moment, Wayne Rooney deserves a lot of credit for that, for how efficiently set up he's got them defensively. You know, a lot of bodies committed back to sort of blocks, getting challenges in when Swansea would get a half chance inside the box or something like that. But especially while Callum Kazim-Richards is out injured at the moment, there is just that bit of a lack of threat going forward for them. Obviously, they've got currently the best defensive record in the league, joint with Bournemouth, but they've also got the worst attacking record in the league, joint with Barnsley. I think that Curtis Davies is currently their top scorer with 2 goals. But a lot of positives still to take from this one from Derby. It was a real battling performance in this one. Swansea probably frustrated they've not gone on to win this one. Next up then we had Hull finally claiming their second win of the season as they saw off Middlesbrough by 2-0 just in the nick of time for Hull. And you feel Grant McCann in this one, you know, if they were to head into another international break having only won that game on the opening day against Preston, it really wouldn't have been a great mood around the camp. In terms of Middlesbrough, the first half seemed a bit drab for this one, but to be fair to them, in the second half they did come out with a lot more purpose in terms of their attacking play, and they certainly had the chances to probably go and bury Hull in this one, to be honest with you. But Matt Ingram was fantastic for keeping the scoreline down when it was 0-0, and I think it was a bit of a mix of Ingram being great and some pretty shoddy finishing from Middlesbrough, to be honest with you. Hull then obviously hit them with that sucker punch. It in the end goes down as a Lumley own goal, the volley which comes in off the post from Keane Lewis-Potter. Middlesbrough do have the ball in the back of the net as well, but that Paddy McNair free kick has to be retaken due to an infringement with the wall, and then Malik Wilkes goes on to make it 2-0 to Hull. So yeah, by no means was this a sparkling performance or anything from Hull, but it was more than needed at this stage of the season, just a result more so than anything. From Middlesbrough, quite a frustrating one given the circumstances of that second half. Next up then to the second goalless draw of the weekend, we had Luton playing at a 0-0 with Huddersfield Town. Typical, because in my prediction I had said that I fancied this one to be a little bit of a goal fest, but yeah, the goals just weren't quite here in this one. First off, definitely Luton who had the better of it. Huddersfield didn't quite get going, but they did manage to keep Luton at bay. Luton having a lot of play and possession in and around that Huddersfield box. It was just that final pass that wasn't quite there for that first half. And then the second half, things seemed to open up a little bit more. The game became a little bit more sort of frantic and back and forth. Huddersfield definitely grew into this one as it went along, but in the end their best chances probably came from a few sort of like speculative efforts from outside the box. And in the end I don't think that the draw in this one is the worst result for either side, given how each sides are both going in the league at the moment. But yeah, just that little bit more on the final third wasn't quite there in this one for either of them. Next then we go to Peterborough up against Bristol City. Bristol City getting back to winning ways on the road. I shouldn't have backed against them on the road, should I? But I mean, to be fair to Peterborough, they had some really nice passages of play in this one. It was just that once again their Achilles heel turning out to be some sloppy moments at the back, which ultimately ended up costing them in this one. As we probably thought, you know, after how Sammy Smollick's time at Bristol City unfolded, he was always going to have a worldie of a game in this one. He did just that. The opening goal was absolutely a terrific strike, wasn't it, to give them the lead. They allow Bristol City back into the game though, who then score the 2 goals. The first one comes from the set piece. I think that's the fourth set piece that Peterborough have conceded from so far this season. Tanner then gives Bristol City the lead before Smodix equalises just before half time. And then in the second half, it's all about game management and that sort of mentality really. And for Bristol City to win it late on is a bit of a sucker punch for Peterborough really. Chris Martin with the goal. Fairly sloppy at the back. I think that Peterborough had a couple opportunities to clear it before Martin eventually fires in from outside the box. But great win for Bristol City there for Peterborough. Things just haven't quite clicked like we thought they might have after that Birmingham win. And there's our last game to go over. We had QPR 3, Preston North End 2. Not exactly the ideal way that North End want to be heading into this international break. I think that the mood around the Preston camp was always sort of going to be determined by what was going to be the outcome after this, successive result of draws. Were we going to come out of it with a win, or were we going to come out of it with a loss after all these draws? And the fact that we come out of this one with a loss after leading in the game as well, it doesn't leave a great feeling, to be honest with you. And there are a couple of things I want to pick away at. But in terms of QPR, fair play to them in this one. They obviously took the lead. Emil Rees gets us back into it. Shunley Maguire with an assist in that one. He also sets up the goal that puts us ahead as well from Josh Early's first goal for the club. And at 2-1, I didn't feel our game management looked great in this one. I've already mentioned it a couple of times on the channel so far this season, but without Patrick Bauer in that backline, I think that we are significantly weaker. I think that was highlighted in the second half. Liam Lindsay came in, and we were also without Andy Hughes as well, who I think has probably been one of our best performing players in that back three so far this season. The QPR equalises a real mix-up between Lindsay and Cunningham. Neither of them can really get under the ball, and then they obviously get that equalised. And then the third goal, my God, it's an absolute shambles from a North End's perspective. I'm not sure what Liam Lindsay's quite trying to do, but fair play to Dykes for being as sort of persistent as he was with not giving up on that loose ball, then puts his head down there, and Story fails to clear it. Brown then with a half clearance falls in the way of Chair, who then makes it 3 for QPR. So fair play to them, because at 2-1 they clearly still sensed that there was something in it for them in this game, and in the end they walked away with all 3 points. For Preston, there's a few things that I feel like we need to work on over this international break, and after that we've got some pretty big games coming up. There we have it though, guys. That will wrap it up for today's video. If you did go in to enjoy, make sure to leave a like. In terms of my results of the weekend, few I could go for, but I think Coventry beating Fulham in the fashion that they did deserves a lot of respect, and the position that they now find themselves in, yeah, I'm going to go for them as my result of the weekend. Goal of the weekend, I'm going to go for Lewis Grobben's goal against Birmingham. Not typical of what we usually see from him, but it was an absolute strike and a half in the end. But that is everything that I had to say in today's video, guys. As always, get your comments and thoughts in the comments down below. Do leave a like if you want to enjoy, and subscribe for some more regular Championship content. Apart from that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.